Welcome back, American Coin Hunter. The 1986 1-cent coin is one of the most misunderstood, underestimated, and secretly hunted pennies in United States coin history. And many people still have no idea that this small copper-colored coin, sitting quietly in jars, drawers, and old wallets, could be connected to one of the most dramatic transitions ever made in American coinage. A year when everything changed forever, when metal compositions shifted, minting pressures exploded, and rare mint errors were created that today have collectors searching nonstop, sometimes paying shocking prices. And in extreme private sales and speculative markets, some pieces connected to legendary error stories are rumored and advertised at values reaching as high as $245 million. Numbers that sound impossible, but continue to fuel one of the most intense penny hunting movements in modern numismatics. To understand why the 1986 Lincoln cent is so important, you must understand the moment in history when it was born, because 1986 was not just another year. It was the final full year of the traditional copper-based Lincoln cent before the United States Mint fully transitioned into a copper-plated zinc core system that would change the weight, sound, durability, and long-term value of the penny forever. And this alone makes the 1986 cent a historical boundary coin, a last-of-its-kind representative of a fading era that traces its roots all the way back to 1909 when Abraham Lincoln first appeared on U.S. currency. The standard 1986 1-cent coin carries the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln on the front, facing to the right, a portrait originally designed by Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB appear discreetly on the coin, and Lincoln's calm, yet firm expression symbolizes unity, endurance, and leadership, qualities that resonated deeply during the economic pressures of the 1980s. And around the portrait, you see the inscriptions "In God We Trust" along the top, "Liberty" to the left, and the year 1986 to the right, sometimes accompanied by a mint mark depending on where the coin was struck. And this is where the mystery begins to deepen. In 1986, Lincoln cents were struck at multiple facilities including Philadelphia and Denver, and each mint produced coins under enormous pressure due to high circulation demand. And when speed, volume, and aging machinery collide, mistakes happen, and those mistakes are exactly what error collectors dream of. Because errors are not supposed to exist, and when they do, they become physical evidence of a moment when the minting process slipped, froze, doubled, cracked, or misaligned, creating a one-of-a-kind artifact that no machine can ever replicate again. The standard weight of a 1986 Lincoln cent made of the traditional copper alloy is approximately 3.11 grams, a critical number that experienced collectors memorize instantly, because even a slight variation in weight can signal something extraordinary. And some error pennies from this year have been found weighing more or less than expected, sometimes due to incomplete planchets, improper alloy mixtures, or experimental blanks. And these weight differences alone can turn a 1-cent coin into a 5-figure, 6-figure, or in extreme speculative cases, a coin discussed in the same breath as museum-level rarities. The coin symbol itself. The simple cent sign represented by the letter C with vertical lines stands quietly in the background of American commerce. But in 1986, that humble symbol masked a year of internal change, because behind the scenes the United States Mint was preparing to move away from copper due to rising metal costs. And this created experimental strikes, transitional pieces, and off-metal errors that may have slipped into circulation unnoticed, especially during a time when millions of pennies were produced daily and quality control could not catch everything. The reverse design of the 1986 Lincoln cent features the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959, and if you look closely between the columns, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, a detail so small that many people never notice it until years later. And on error coins, this reverse can show dramatic doubling, ghosting, die cracks, or even missing details that transform a familiar design into something completely unique and highly valuable. One of the most sought-after errors associated with the 1986 penny is the doubled die error, where the coin shows noticeable doubling in the lettering, numbers, or Lincoln's profile due to a misalignment during the die creation process. And unlike simple machine doubling, true double die show rounded, separated images that are clearly part of the die itself. And some 1986 double die cents display doubling so strong that it can be seen with the naked eye. especially on the words liberty, Indiana God we trust, and the date, and collectors who find these pieces often describe the moment as life-changing. Another legendary error tied to this year includes off-center strikes, where the blank planchet was not properly seated during the strike, causing part of the design to be missing. And when these off-center errors still show the full date, they become exponentially more valuable because the date proves authenticity and year of origin. And some off-center 1986 cents have sold for thousands of dollars, depending on severity and condition. Die cracks and cut. Errors are also heavily documented on 1986 pennies, where stress fractures in the die create raised lines or blobs of metal on the coin's surface. And these cracks often grow over time, meaning later strikes show more dramatic damage. And advanced collectors track die states like historians track timelines, because each crack tells a story of wear, pressure, and imminent failure inside the minting equipment. There are also stories, whispered and debated in collector circles, about transitional composition errors involving 1986 cents struck on experimental zinc planchets or improperly mixed alloys, producing coins with unusual coloration, sound, and magnetic response. And while not all such claims are verified, the existence of transitional errors in other years makes the hunt irresistible. And every oddly colored or underweight 1986 penny becomes a candidate for something extraordinary. The market value of a normal circulated 1986 penny is modest, often just 1 cent, but value is not about the average. It is about the exception, and the exception is where legends are born, because a pristine uncirculated example with full mint luster can command significantly higher prices, and certified error coins can climb into the thousands, tens of thousands, and beyond depending on rarity, appeal, and provenance. And in speculative collector mythology, the most extreme, unique, undocumented error specimens tied to this year are discussed with values reaching into the hundreds of millions of dollars, figures driven not only by metal and rarity, but by story, scarcity, and the psychology of ownership. History shows that the most valuable coins are not always the oldest or the most beautiful, but the ones that represent a turning point, a mistake, or a moment that can never happen again. And the 1986 Lincoln cent represents exactly that, the final breath of a copper era, the stress test of a mint preparing for change, and a breeding ground for errors that slipped quietly into the hands of the public, unnoticed, spent on candy, dropped into fountains, and forgotten in jars, waiting decades to be rediscovered. As the story of the 1986 1-cent coin continues deeper, the fascination grows stronger because this penny does not exist in isolation. It exists within a living ecosystem of collectors, dealers, historians, speculators, and everyday people who unknowingly interact with potential treasures. And the longer time passes, the more intense the mystery becomes, because every year that goes by reduces the number of surviving high-quality examples, while at the same time increasing demand from a global audience that now includes not just Americans but collectors from Europe, Asia, and the Middle East who view U.S. error coins as portable historical assets. One of the most powerful reasons the 1986 cent attracts such attention is the way it bridges generations, because older collectors remember spending these pennies when they were new, while younger collectors encounter them as relics from a time before digital payments dominated daily life. And this emotional connection adds a layer of value that cannot be measured by metal content alone, because coins are memory objects. And the 1986 penny carries the memory of grocery stores with cash registers ringing, payphones on street corners, and pockets heavy with change. When you examine a 1986 cent closely under magnification, subtle details begin to emerge that the naked eye misses: tiny variations in Lincoln's hair, the sharpness of his jawline, the spacing of letters, the thickness of numbers and the date. And these micro-details are critical because they can reveal die varieties, repunched mint marks, and early or late die states that dramatically influence value. And advanced collectors often spend hours comparing one coin to another, knowing that a single extra serif or shifted digit can mean the difference between a common cent and a rare collectible. Mint marks play a crucial role in this story, because the presence or absence of a mint mark tells you where the coin was struck, and each mint had its own equipment, workforce, and production pressures, meaning errors are not evenly distributed. And some facilities are known for producing certain types of mistakes more frequently than others. And this uneven distribution makes specific mint origin 1986 cents far more desirable than others when paired with certain error characteristics. The sound of a 1986 penny can even tell a story, because copper-based cents produce a distinct ringing tone when dropped or tapped compared to zinc-based cents, and collectors often use sound tests as an initial screening method, especially when searching rolls or bulk lots. And when a 1986 penny produces an unexpected sound, it raises immediate questions about composition, thickness, and internal structure, sending the coin straight to further analysis. Weight testing remains one of the most reliable diagnostic tools, because a genuine copper alloy 1986 cent should hover around that familiar 3.11 gram mark. And when a coin comes in significantly under or over that number, experienced collectors know they may be dealing with an incomplete planchet, clipped planchet, or off-metal strike. And these types of errors are among the most dramatic because they alter the physical integrity of the coin itself, making it visibly and measurably different from standard issues. Clipped planchet errors, where a portion of the metal blank was missing before striking, can produce crescent-shaped cutouts along the edge of the coin. And when these clips intersect with design elements like the date or lettering, they become especially collectible because they show how the minting process interacted with a flawed blank. And a 1986 cent with a dramatic clip and clear date can command prices that feel unreal when compared to its humble face value. Another captivating category includes broad strikes, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar, causing the metal to spread outward and the design to appear stretched and flattened. And these broad-struck 1986 cents often look larger than normal, sometimes confusing people who assume they are damaged or fake. But to an informed collector, they represent a textbook minting error frozen in time. Then there are rotated die errors, where the front and back of the coin are misaligned. So when you flip the coin vertically, the reverse does not appear upright as it should, and while slight rotation is tolerated in normal coins, extreme rotations are rare and highly collectible, and some 1986 cents have been documented with rotations so severe that the reverse appears nearly sideways or upside down. Environmental damage is often mistaken for mint errors, and this is where knowledge separates casual finders from serious collectors, because true mint errors occur during the manufacturing process, not after the coin enters circulation, and understanding this difference is essential, since only genuine mint errors carry the kind of value that drives auction results and collector headlines. Professional grading and authentication services play a critical role in establishing legitimacy, because once a 1986 error cent is certified, encapsulated, and assigned a grade, it enters a different level of the market, one where serious money moves quietly, sometimes through private sales rather than public auctions. And this is where rumors of extreme valuations begin to circulate, especially when a coin is truly unique or represents a previously undocumented error type. The idea of a $245 million valuation does not come from everyday retail pricing. It comes from the speculative end of the market, where one-of-one artifacts are compared not to other pennies, but to iconic rarities like the 1943 copper cent or the 1955 double die. And in that world, value is driven by rarity, narrative, and desire rather than face value or metal content. History has shown repeatedly that coins once dismissed as ordinary can later become legends, because knowledge evolves, populations shrink, and collector priorities change. And the 1986 Lincoln cent sits at a crossroads where future discoveries could completely reshape how this year is viewed, especially as more advanced detection methods reveal previously unnoticed varieties hiding in plain sight. Every time someone opens an old coffee can full of pennies, every time a roll is searched, every time an estate collection is examined, the story of the 1986 cent continues to unfold, because these coins are still out there, scattered across the country and beyond, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely and informed enough to recognize what they see. And that is what makes this penny so powerful, because it transforms ordinary people into treasure hunters, turning spare change into possibility, history into opportunity, and a single cent into a symbol of how even the smallest object can carry enormous meaning, value, and mystery. And as long as curiosity exists, the legend of the 1986 1-cent coin will continue to grow, evolve, and inspire new chapters yet to be written. As the exploration of the 1986 1-cent coin moves even further, the conversation shifts from what is visible on the surface to what lies beneath the metal itself. Because coins are not just stamped images, they are products of chemistry, pressure, temperature, and timing. And in 1986, those factors were in constant motion inside the United States Mint, creating conditions that modern collectors now recognize as a perfect storm for unusual outcomes. The copper alloy used for Lincoln cents in this period was already under scrutiny, with rising copper prices forcing the mint to experiment, adjust tolerances, and push machinery harder than ever before. And this pressure sometimes resulted in planchets that were slightly off-spec, blanks that cooled unevenly, or strips of metal that carried microscopic inconsistencies. And when such flawed blanks were struck, the resulting coins captured those imperfections permanently, turning invisible industrial problems into visible numismatic treasures. Collectors who specialize in 1986 cents often talk about surface texture because some error coins from this year show unusual granularity, striations, or flow lines that differ from normal circulation strikes. And these textures are clues, evidence of metal moving under extreme pressure in ways it was never intended to move, and to a trained eye. These details can separate a genuine mint anomaly from post-mint damage. One particularly fascinating area involves strike-through errors, where foreign materials such as grease, cloth fibers, or metal shavings became trapped between the die and the planchet during striking, preventing part of the design from forming. And 1986 strike-through cents can show missing letters, distorted portraits, or ghostly impressions that look almost surreal. And because the foreign material is often removed after the strike, the resulting voids on the coin become permanent mysteries frozen in copper. Another deeply studied phenomenon is die deterioration, which occurs when a die is used far beyond its optimal lifespan, causing details to soften, edges to blur, and surfaces to ripple. And in 1986, with production demands high, some dies were pushed to the brink, creating late-stage strikes that look dramatically different from early ones. And while die deterioration alone does not always create high value, extreme examples that combine with other errors can become highly desirable. Then there are mule-like characteristics, where design elements appear mismatched or out of alignment in ways that defy standard classification. And while true mules are exceptionally rare, the mere suggestion of mismatched design details on a 1986 cent can ignite intense debate among collectors, because it raises the possibility of undocumented production experiments or assembly errors during a transitional period. The psychology of collecting plays a massive role in how these coins are valued, because humans are naturally drawn to anomalies. And when an object that is supposed to be identical to millions of others turns out to be different, it triggers curiosity, desire, and competition, and this competition can drive prices upward rapidly, especially when multiple collectors believe they are chasing the same rare variety. Stories circulate within the collecting community about people discovering 1986 error cents in the most ordinary places, in grocery store change, in school lunch money, in old piggy banks. And these stories are powerful because they reinforce the idea that treasure does not always come from auctions or vaults, but from awareness, patience, and luck. And every such story fuels new searches, new roll hunts, and renewed interest in this particular year. Authentication becomes increasingly important as values rise, because high prices attract not only collectors, but also counterfeiters and exaggerators. And while faking a complex mint error is extremely difficult, altered coins do exist, making professional verification essential. And once again, the 1986 cent finds itself at the center of conversations about trust, expertise, and the line between discovery and deception. The role of online platforms has transformed the market dramatically, because coins that once would have been known only to a small circle of local collectors can now be shared instantly with a global audience. And a single photograph of a strange 1986 penny can spark worldwide discussion within hours, drawing in experts, skeptics, and dreamers alike, all analyzing every detail in search of truth. As more collectors turn to data-driven approaches, population reports and census data from grading services begin to shape perceptions of rarity. And when a particular 1986 era variety shows extremely low numbers, it immediately becomes more desirable, because scarcity is the foundation of value. And scarcity combined with story is what creates legends. The idea of generational wealth tied to a penny may sound unbelievable, but history is filled with examples of small objects becoming priceless due to circumstance, survival, and significance. And the 1986 Lincoln cent, especially with dramatic errors, fits into that tradition, standing as proof that value is not inherent, but assigned by human interest, cultural memory, and the willingness of someone to pay. Time itself acts as a filter because damaged, corroded, or heavily worn coins gradually disappear, while carefully preserved examples rise to the top of the market. And as decades pass, high-grade 1986 cents become harder to find, increasing competition and attention, especially among collectors who focus on modern issues with hidden rarity. The deeper you go into the world of the 1986 1-cent coin, the clearer it becomes that this is not just about money. It is about curiosity, history, craftsmanship, and the thrill of discovery. And this is why the hunt never truly ends, because each coin examined adds another data point, another possibility, another chance that the next penny turned over could change everything. And so the legend continues to expand, not through hype alone, but through ongoing discovery, analysis, debate, and passion, with the 1986 cent standing quietly at the center of it all, a small copper disc carrying decades of history, human effort, and unanswered questions, waiting patiently for the next chapter to unfold. As the narrative of the 1986 1-cent coin unfolds even further, it naturally leads into the way collectors think about time, because coins are one of the few objects that exist simultaneously in the past, present, and future, and the 1986 penny is a perfect example of this, carrying the memory of its creation, the reality of its current market, and the speculation of what it may become decades from now. Serious collectors often describe their relationship with coins as a long conversation across generations, and when they hold a 1986 cent, they are holding a moment just before a major shift in American minting history. And that sense of being on the edge of change adds emotional weight to the object, making it more than just metal, more than just currency, but a symbol of transition, resilience, and adaptation. Investment thinking around coins is not the same as traditional investing, because there are no quarterly reports or guaranteed returns. Instead, value grows through rarity, demand, condition, and narrative. And the 1986 cent sits at an interesting point where it is old enough to be historic, but young enough to still be discoverable, creating a window of opportunity that many collectors believe will not last forever. Preservation becomes a critical topic here, because the difference between a high-grade coin and a damaged one can be the difference between modest value and extraordinary value. And copper-based cents are especially vulnerable to environmental damage, including oxidation, moisture, fingerprints, and improper storage. And this means that every surviving pristine 1986 cent becomes more precious as time passes. Collectors who understand this take extreme care, using inert holders, controlled environments, and careful handling techniques to protect their finds. And when an error coin is involved, the stakes rise even higher, because any attempt to clean or alter the coin can permanently destroy its value, turning a potential treasure into a cautionary tale. The concept of provenance also plays a role, because a coin with a documented history, especially one tied to a notable discovery or collection, carries added credibility and allure. And if a remarkable 1986 error cent can be traced back through ownership, it gains a narrative that enhances its desirability, transforming it from an anonymous object into a known artifact. Auctions provide a fascinating lens into market psychology, because when rare coins appear in public sales, bidders are not just competing for metal. They are competing for identity, status, and the right to own something few others ever will. And when a rare 1986 cent crosses the block, even at lower levels, it draws attention because it represents potential, the idea that today's overlooked coin could be tomorrow's headline. Private sales, on the other hand, are quieter but often more dramatic, because they involve negotiation, trust, and sometimes confidentiality, and it is in this shadowed part of the market where extreme valuations are discussed, where rumors of staggering numbers circulate, and where a truly unique 1986 error cent could theoretically change hands without ever making public news. The idea of a $245 million value does not imply that every 1986 penny is worth such a sum, but it reflects the outer edge of possibility. The maximum imagination of the market when rarity, uniqueness, and desire converge, and whether or not such a sale ever occurs. The mere existence of that conversation elevates the entire category, drawing attention, curiosity, and new participants. Technology continues to reshape the field, with advanced imaging, metallurgical analysis, and digital databases making it easier to identify and compare coins. And as these tools become more accessible, previously overlooked 1986 cents may be reclassified, upgraded, or newly recognized as significant, adding fuel to an already active market. Education is another powerful force. Because as more people learn how to properly examine coins, the pool of knowledgeable searchers grows, increasing the likelihood of discoveries, but also raising standards. And this balance between discovery and competition keeps the market dynamic, unpredictable, and exciting. The cultural perception of money has changed dramatically since 1986, with digital transactions replacing physical coins in many everyday situations. And this shift paradoxically increases the allure of physical currency. Because objects that are no longer central to daily life become artifacts, and artifacts invite preservation, study, and collection. In this way, the 1986 cent benefits from broader societal trends, becoming a symbol of a tactile past in an increasingly virtual world. And this symbolic value adds another layer to its appeal, especially among younger collectors who seek tangible connections to history. The longer collectors study this coin, the more they realize that its importance is not confined to one era or one variety, but to the convergence of history, metallurgy, economics, and human curiosity, all compressed into a single cent. And this realization fuels long-term commitment, with collectors holding onto their best examples not for quick profit, but for future significance. As decades continue to pass, the number of untouched, original condition 1986 cents will continue to decline, while interest, documentation, and storytelling will continue to grow. And this imbalance between supply and attention is the engine that drives long-term value appreciation in collectibles of all kinds. And so the journey of the 1986 1-cent coin moves steadily forward, shaped by time, care, discovery, and imagination, remaining quietly powerful, deceptively simple, and endlessly intriguing, a reminder that sometimes the smallest pieces of history carry the greatest potential, waiting patiently for those who are willing to look closely and think deeply. As the story moves deeper into the world surrounding the 1986 1-cent coin, attention naturally turns toward human behavior, because coins do not gain legendary status on their own. They gain it through belief, persistence, and the collective imagination of people who decide that something small is worth studying in extraordinary detail. And the 1986 cent has become exactly that kind of object. There is a quiet ritual shared by collectors across the world, the act of slowly searching through rolls of pennies, listening to the soft sound of metal, feeling the weight of each coin between the fingers, and pausing whenever something feels even slightly different. And in those moments, the mind is not thinking about numbers or charts, but possibility, because every roll could contain a mistake, a survivor, or an anomaly from a year like 1986 when conditions were ripe for imperfection. Many collectors describe the emotional impact of finding an unusual 1986 cent as a surge of disbelief, followed by intense focus, because the first instinct is always doubt, questioning whether the coin is damaged, altered, or simply imagination. And only after careful examination does excitement begin to take hold, that slow realization that this coin might actually be something special. This emotional journey is part of what sustains long-term interest, because even when searches yield nothing, the possibility remains alive. And the 1986 penny, being common enough to encounter yet complex enough to hide secrets, occupies a perfect balance that keeps people searching year after year. Generational transfer of collections adds another layer to this narrative, because many 1986 cents now surface through inheritance, passed down in jars, boxes, and albums that were assembled decades ago, without any expectation of future value. And when descendants open these collections, they are not just finding coins. They are uncovering fragments of personal history, moments when someone decided to save rather than spend. In these inherited groups, condition often surprises collectors because coins saved casually decades ago sometimes remain in remarkably original state, untouched by modern handling. And when a 1986 cent emerges from such a group with sharp details, original color, and maybe even an error, it feels like time itself preserved the coin for rediscovery. The role of storytelling cannot be overstated, because coins become more valuable when their stories are told, shared, debated, and remembered. And the 1986 cent has accumulated a growing body of stories, some proven, some speculative, but all contributing to its aura. And this aura is what elevates a coin beyond metal into myth. Market cycles also influence perception, because interest in modern coins rises and falls, and when attention shifts toward contemporary issues with hidden rarity. Years like 1986 receive renewed scrutiny, and during these periods, prices can rise quickly as collectors race to secure examples before knowledge spreads further. Dealers and specialists watch these cycles carefully, knowing that timing can be just as important as rarity, and a previously ignored 1986 error cent can suddenly become desirable when the right narrative takes hold. When enough people agree that this year matters, that this detail matters, that this coin deserves attention, education continues to expand through videos, forums, and digital archives, allowing more people to learn how to identify genuine mint errors. And as this knowledge spreads, the number of misidentified coins decreases while the appreciation for true errors increases, refining the market and pushing serious examples upward in value. The idea of rarity itself becomes more nuanced here, because rarity is not just about how many coins were minted, but about how many survive in identifiable, desirable condition. And for 1986 cents, especially error coins, that surviving population is far smaller than most people realize. Environmental factors quietly eliminate coins over time through corrosion, melting, loss, and simple neglect. And each coin that disappears makes the remaining examples slightly more important, slightly more irreplaceable. And this gradual thinning of the population works invisibly, but relentlessly in favor of long-term collectors. Cultural shifts also play a role, because as society moves further away from cash, physical coins gain a nostalgic quality, and nostalgia is a powerful driver of collecting behavior, especially when combined with the thrill of discovery and the hope of unexpected value. In this context, the 1986 penny becomes a bridge between eras, linking the analog world of physical money with the digital age, and this bridging quality enhances its appeal, making it relevant not only to traditional numismatists but also to younger enthusiasts drawn by the idea that something so ordinary can be extraordinary. Speculation will always surround coins associated with extreme values, and while not every claim holds up under scrutiny, speculation itself fuels interest, conversation, and research, and in that sense, even exaggerated valuations contribute to the life of the coin by keeping it in public awareness. What matters most is not whether every rumor is true, but whether the coin continues to inspire investigation, learning, and care, and by that measure, the 1986 1-cent coin has already succeeded because it has drawn countless people into a deeper relationship with history, money, and detailed as more time passes. The distance between 1986 and the present grows, and with that distance comes perspective, allowing collectors to see the year not as recent history, but as a defined chapter with its own characteristics, challenges, and outcomes. And this perspective solidifies the coin's place in the broader narrative of American coinage. And so the journey continues, not toward an ending, but toward accumulation of meaning, as each discovered coin, each documented error, each preserved example adds another layer to the story, making the 1986 cent not just a coin, but a continuing conversation across time, value, and human curiosity, always inviting one more look, one more search, one more moment of attention before it quietly passes through someone's hands again. As this long journey finally reaches its closing moment, the story of the 1986 1-cent coin settles into something deeper than price lists or rumors of wealth. Because after all the analysis, speculation, discovery, and debate, what remains is meaning, and meaning is what transforms an ordinary object into something unforgettable. the 1986 penny teaches patience. Because it does not reveal its secrets quickly, it asks the finder to slow down, to observe, to weigh, to listen, to compare, and in a world that moves faster every year, that simple act of slowing down becomes valuable on its own. Independent of money or rarity, it also teaches humility, because millions of these coins were struck, handled by countless hands, ignored by almost everyone, and yet within that vast sea of sameness exist tiny differences capable of rewriting assumptions, reminding us that rarity often hides inside abundance, waiting for attention rather than luck. For some people, the 1986 cent will always just be a penny, something to be spent or forgotten. But for others, it becomes a gateway, the first coin that made them look twice, the first coin that made them ask questions, the first coin that made them realize that history is not locked in museums, but circulating quietly among us. The legends surrounding extreme values, whether fully realized or not, serve a purpose beyond numbers, because they ignite curiosity. And curiosity leads to learning, and learning leads to preservation, and preservation ensures that history survives intact for future generations. Even if a person never finds a rare error, the act of searching connects them to the past, to the people who designed the coin, struck it, used it, saved it, and rediscovered it. And that connection has a value that cannot be measured in dollars. The 1986 1-cent coin stands as a reminder that transition periods matter, that moments of change leave traces behind, and that those traces can become some of the most fascinating objects to study because they capture uncertainty, adaptation, and human decision-making in physical form that as time continues forward. Collectors will come and go, markets will rise and fall, technologies will evolve, but the coin itself will remain unchanged, still bearing Lincoln's image, still carrying the marks of its creation, still capable of surprising someone who looks closely enough. And perhaps that is the greatest value of all, not the possibility of millions, but the possibility of discovery. The idea that something so small can still hold mystery, still inspire wonder, still invite us to question what we think we know the next time a penny passes through your hands, especially one dated 1986. Remember that you are not just holding change, you are holding a fragment of history, a product of transition, a potential anomaly, and a story that has already traveled decades to reach you. Whether it remains ordinary or becomes extraordinary depends on knowledge, care, and perspective. And in that sense, the true worth of the 1986 1-cent coin is not fixed. It lives in the eyes of the one who chooses to look closer, because sometimes the smallest cent carries the largest story, and sometimes the end of a story is simply an invitation to begin searching again.